Hey guys, so this is just a little quick video of me showing how I block out my brows for drag. I've just done my cleanser, I've just done my toner, I've moisturised, I've primed as well. After doing all of that and letting it sink in, this is my process. So you're going to want, I guess it's 3 products, but also 4 for me personally. So I guess this counts as 2. So mainly you're going to want Elmer's washable glue stick, you know, doing all that. But I like to have 2. And I know that I kind of learnt this from Trixie Mattel because she talked about it, a bit about it. But I like to use this because you can kind of get in a bit more and then you kind of do a general swoop. I'm running out of this. But I also like to do a bit of a technique, which I'll talk about in a bit. That's kind of a technique that Blue Hydrangea uses as well. On top of that, you can just use any old spoolie. Literally, this is some NYX spoolie, well, brow / spoolie thing. This is just an old one. I have a separate one for when I'm doing normal brows for beauty looks, and just airspun, the good old fashioned airspun that drag queens use. I also forgot a really crucial thing that you're going to need, and that's a hairdryer. A bit of a big thing to forget, so I guess that's 5. So you're going to want to have another thing as well, which is some face wipes. Literally anything. I alternate between these and simple. Just anything. It's just for clearing her up around the brows. So I like to actually these days do both at the same time. I do around 5 layers, so I just kind of, and also licking is important. You can also use setting spray if you don't want to do that, but you know. So I just kind of go against the grain. It just really helps to like get it in there. So then after you've done those layers, you just brush those up. You can plug your brows before this, but it's not essential. It does make it a little bit easier though. And after that, kind of just lick my fingers and just sort of push that in. And the reason why you lick is because it kind of makes it less. Sometimes glue does a thing where it like kind of balls up and that can create texture. So licking, or just adding moisture in general, but licking is easier, kind of helps with that texture. So that's our first layer. So then you go in with a makeup wipe, and this is just to clean up around the edges. Gets rid of the glue around it and just makes less texture, you know, so it looks a bit nicer. Then after that, you just go in with the hairdryer. I like to use it on the cooler setting. I recommend doing the cooler setting because that'll probably melt it otherwise. So you don't need too long, you just need to do it as long as the glue is dry, and then after that you go in with the second layer. And it really is just repeating the process again. Okay, so now we're on the 5th layer. So the 5th layer is a bit different. This is the final layer, and you don't have to do 5 layers. It's also dependent on how your brows work. It also depends on the environment that you're doing it in. If you're in a bit of a sweatier environment, sometimes you might want to do an extra layer just to kind of, because sometimes it doesn't stick very well, which is what I found. So on the 5th layer, you want to start off by doing as you normally would, which is just a layer, and then you want to get your big glue stick. And this is what I meant when I said about Blue Hydrangea. This is who I found it from, just from her tutorials and stuff. And you just get the glue stick and you just literally just peel off some of the glue. This one's running out. You just peel off some of the glue, and it is going to be a bit of a gross technique, but you literally just lick that glob and you just place it on your brows like so. Literally you want a lot. Well, not too much, you want around this level, and then you just work it in, and you literally want your entire eyebrow to be covered in purple essentially. Then you do the same on the other brow. Can be a little tricky sometimes. That's where the spit comes in handy, as gross as it is. or your setting spray, or just water. Once your brows are kind of looking like this, then you just do what you did before, and you go in with your wipe, and you just clear up around the edges. The main goal of this isn't necessarily to get rid of all the glue around it, it's more about making sure the texture isn't bad, because you're going with powder anyway, which will help cover up everything. It's more about the texture, that's the key thing. So if there's any bumps or lumps with the glue, make sure that's smoothed out and or just removed if it's too much. So now that I'm at a point that I'm happy with it, you do not go in with the hairdryer, instead you get your powder. So for me, I use Airspun, which is just like a drag queen classic, and I go in with translucent extra coverage 07041 because it has a little bit of colour in it. I think you can get truly translucent. No power's really that translucent. But anyway, a bit of colour just helps with like blocking it out. So what you want to do is you want to load up the puff, and instead of smacking it in, you kind of just, first of all, gently just tap it almost and cover up that brow. It will get everywhere. You're not doing drag if it's not getting everywhere. So you just tap it on, like so. Because that's the initial thing that grips to it, that's why we keep it wet. Then, when it's all covered, that's when you start adding pressure, and you'll feel how much or little pressure you should be adding. And you just slowly build up that pressure each time. Because if you just go straight in, it's just going to pull the glue off. Then you just dust it off. That really is all of the actual blocking process. So for me, after this, what I would then do is I'd go in with some colour correcting / extra stages of coverage, I guess. So first I actually start off with P. Louise. Since I've added this to my brow blocking routine, it has been incredible. Concealer just doesn't do the same in terms of blockage. So I just add a couple of dabs on like so. And we are going to do some colour correction, but I find that doing this first really just ups the game in terms of coverage. So then you just pat it in like you would anything else, really. I'm using just a Real Techniques sponge, but you can use any sponge. I also like to use a stipple and brush because I find it helps with just getting in the nooks and crannies of the spaces in between your brows that are covered. So then I just go in with a second layer of powder and just set all of that. And you may notice that I kind of do have some hairs showing through still. That's not abnormal. You can either pack on a little bit of powder extra, like I'm doing right now. And also it's drag, don't worry about caking it. But then we do go in with the colour correction as well. So for colour correction, I don't use what I used to use a red colour corrector, but which a lot of drag queens use. I now just use a Revolution stick, which is in F10. This is also what I use for cream bronzer, I guess it would be, for drag. And yeah, so this is a new one, so I'm just going to open it up. This is just super nice, especially the new one. And I just slather it on. Make sure, because it is still sensitive at this stage, to just kind of go with the grain, I guess, of your hair and just cover it up like that. And this is super good. I wouldn't personally use this as a foundation. I know, even though it's a foundation, fast-paced, whatever, but it's so good for covering brows and contour and highlighting and stuff. Definitely a huge recommend. And it's only £4. I also like to just kind of stipple it in a bit with a brush like this, because again, it just sort of fills it in, and notice how you don't see the hairs as much. So yeah, that's pretty much the full routine for how I block my brows. And after this, I just do my normal routine, which is just foundation, concealer, contour and highlighting, all of that jazz. And yeah, so you just kind of layer it on top. You can add a bit of powder. I don't actually normally add a bit of powder after this, just to kind of make it a little bit nicer looking, but you can do, which I actually might do, but just a slight bit of powder. But you don't necessarily have to on this stage because it is quite flat at this point. It just also depends on how well you've done it in the previous stages. But that's how I do it. So that's a little bit about my routine for blocking my brows. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another video.